All right, welcome to the Practical Management or Practical Magic, The Road to Success is Not a Straight Line, hosted by the LAMA Practical and Applied Management Committee. This is the next discussion in our supervisory conversation series, in which we strive to offer a synchronous forum for all interested participants, regardless of membership status in ALA or position in a library. This session is being recorded and will be posted on the LAMA PAM YouTube channel. Due to technical difficulties, our last practical management chat on never-ending vacancies will be re-recorded and posted as soon as possible. Today's featured presenters are Francis Maloy and Tim Burke. Francis is the college librarian at Union College in Schenectady, New York since 2012. I'm from Oklahoma, so I hope I said that correctly.
Yes, you did.
You got it.
You got it.
In this role, she oversees all functions of the Schaefer Library, Adirondack Research Library, Union College Permanent Collection, and Mandeville Gallery. Prior to Union, Maloy was first head of Access Services and then leader for public services at Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia, from 1992 to 2012. Maloy began her career at Hamilton College in Clinton, New York. She was the 2004-2005 ACRL president and the president of the Oberlin Group in 2016. Maloy is the mother of 3 teenage children and founded the ACRL discussion group, Balancing Baby and Book, to give professional librarians a place to share experiences, support each other, and affect change. Tim Burke is the executive director of the Upper Hudson Library System in Albany, New York. His 30-plus-year career in the profession includes service, management and leadership experience in academic libraries, public libraries, and library systems. He earned his MLS from the University of Buffalo. He is active in many statewide organizations and committees working to improve and enhance the New York library community, most significantly the New York Library Association, where he is just finishing a term as the NYLA president. And Francis and Tim, I will hand it over to you.
Great. Thank you so much. So can you see us? I'm not sure what you're seeing. Are you seeing just the slides? Can you hear us?
I hear you. Let's see what the chat participants say.
I'm sorry, what? Okay, they can hear me, but can you see us? A small image. Okay, all right, good. Just wanting to know. Okay, so I just a little background. So I joined LAMA a couple years ago, and someone from your committee reached out to me and said, "Hey, would you be willing to do one of these webinars?" And I said, sure. And I saw that you really like to have a public librarian with an academic librarian. And so Tim Burke was the first person who popped into my mind as someone who would be a great person to do this with. We met through our service on the Capital District Library Council in New York. And New York has several of these library councils scattered throughout the state. And it's how New York's libraries collaborate together, public, academic, school, hospital, law, all different kinds of libraries, and they get money through the state that way. And so Tim and I met to discuss what we would talk about, and we came up with this title, The Road to Success is Not a Straight Line, and then Tim found that wonderful illustration there of, you think it's a straight line, and then reality sets in, and you end up in places you never thought possible. I don't know if you want to.
And the one other thing I really like about this series is the word practical right in the title. That's kind of one of the things I try and focus on working with the library community is focusing on the practical, what really works, what's worked for us, what's worked for me, to try and apply that to other people's careers. So. Right. I'm excited about the opportunity to do this.
Right, and I would say that Tim walks the talk. Being on the CDLC board together, he is very practical, and it's great.
In a good way.
Yes, in a good way, and it moves things along at a nice pace. You don't get stuck in corners. Okay, so I think you can switch the next slide. Okay, so just a little bit more information about us. I don't know if we need to repeat anything since you gave such a good introduction, but I do want to highlight for myself that I went to St. Lawrence University, which is a small liberal arts college, and then after going to SUNY UAlbany for library school, I felt like, oh, I don't know about public libraries. I don't know about school libraries. I barely feel like I'm a librarian. I better stick with the library that I'm comfortable with, that I've used before. So that's why I really thought, okay, academic. And so I got lucky, and it's really, truly, I got lucky. I got my first job at Hamilton College. They had a failed search. and through a friend of a friend, I found out that they were starting the beginning of the school term without a librarian. And that's how I got my first job. As I applied, and they were desperate, and hired me gratefully. And of course, it worked out. I stayed there 10 years. And then good long time at Emory University in various capacities, and then now at Union College, which I really do love, being a small college library director. Like I thought I would, but I almost did different career paths. And then just to highlight the experience outside the library, Tim and I were just talking about how important this is. That I worked on the CDLC board and other boards, and I was very involved in ACRL throughout a good chunk of my career.
And this is my dorky librarian picture. This is me holding a page from a Gutenberg Bible that the New York State Library owns. And I got so excited about the opportunity to hold a piece of history like that I took the picture, and I used that occasionally just to kind of illustrate that, again, very dorky librarian. So, and a little different from Frances' career, I did start in academic libraries, a BA in history. We both share that. Mine's from Siena College, which is a small Franciscan school right around here in Albany. Went to University of Buffalo for my MLS. And first part of my career, you can see, was in academic libraries, kind of moving up the chain of command, and had an opportunity, and we'll talk about it a little bit later on in the program, to move to public libraries, which I've done, and then most recently moved into staying in public libraries, but into public library systems or consortia at the Upper Hudson Library System. And as we noted, I've been pretty active in the New York library community on a statewide level in a lot of different capacities. But one of the things we're going to talk about is the importance of getting involved and volunteering and getting involved in opportunities to network with other professionals. And this, what you're seeing right now, is a perfect example of that. Frances and I probably would not have crossed paths professionally unless we both volunteered for the CDLC board. So just a good example of what we're going to talk about.
You can switch next slide, please.
So we're trying to kind of illustrate the fact that it maybe started, we had our own straight line imagined. So when I started my academic career at Siena as a student, I worked in the library. I saw how the librarians interacted with the community, with the students, with the staff, with the faculty, how they connected people with information. And the short version is, by the time I was out, graduated from Siena, I was accepted to the University of Buffalo, went right there for my MLS. I worked in a number of different libraries at UB, but it was all academic libraries. So when I got out of library school, it was the only library I knew. It was the only path I knew. And to make it even more insular, the first full-time job I got getting out of library school was at my alma mater, at the library at Siena College. So it was a very kind of insular picture. And I would say that going into library school, becoming a librarian, my plan was to be an academic librarian. That was my vision for my career. Probably essentially moving up the chain of command to be an academic library director at some point, but really no defined goals beyond that, or, you know, frankly, any real idea about how to make any of that happen, other than to put my head down and do a good job as an academic librarian. You can change the slide. So as we've talked about, the reality is a little bit different. The first 18 years I was at Siena, very happy in academic libraries. I never had a day where I said, I wish I wasn't doing this as my career. But it was only one library, and I was moving up the chain of command. You can see that I started with assistant librarian, moved to associate librarian, managed a couple of different departments, and at one point was acting library director during a time when we were building a brand new library. So that was super exciting and exhilarating. But I had an unexpected opportunity. I was at a social event and somebody said, hey, you should talk to that guy over there because he's a librarian too, and you'll have lots to talk about. And it turns out that that person was the director of the Albany Public Library, and we hit it off. And the short version of the story is eventually he offered me an invitation to come and join him at Albany Public Library as the assistant director. And, with that opportunity, I became a public librarian. And what I like to say when I talk about this is I had the unique opportunity to fall in love with my career and my profession twice. First time I fell in love was when I became a librarian. The second time was when I became a public librarian. No offense to academic libraries. But I really do, it was a really kind of a professionally rejuvenating kind of experience to fall in love again. That public library work and the leadership experience at Albany Public Library led me to keep on looking for other opportunities in public libraries, and the one that presented itself was the Upper Hudson Library System. So I'm the executive director. I have 29 member libraries, but they're all independent, autonomous organizations with their own boards and their own funding structures and their own directors. And they remind me every day that they are independent and autonomous of me. But what I get to do is help 29 libraries in 2 counties with 450,000 people help their communities with library services. And it really is kind of the perfect job for me, because I really do get to help people help their communities every single day. So it really has given me that opportunity to make a difference on a wider stage. And then the last set of bullets there is really the other activities I've done on kind of a regional level, statewide level. In addition to teaching the public libraries class at the UAlbany Master's Program, I've been involved in the New York Library Association pretty heavily for the last 10 years or so, serving as treasurer and then just finishing up as president. The really awkward acronym of PLISDO, which is the Public Library System Directors Organization. So these are those systems that Francis referred to around the state that are public libraries only. And that's just a group of people who do what I do, working together to try and bring about statewide change for public libraries. NILES is the New York Alliance of Library Systems. You get the sense from these things that they're all designed to bring statewide groups together to affect change on a bigger level. And I think that's really kind of what I like most about what I get to do every day, is because I get to do these kind of things and they're part of my job.
Right.
You can switch the slide.
Right. And switch your paper now, because I think when we switch papers, it makes the noise. Okay, so So as I said earlier, I started library school and my first job as an academic librarian. And I remember coming home after, like maybe the first week at work and saying to myself, wow, I really like my job. This is really great. Wow, I didn't think I could really like a job this much. This is really, really fun. And, I can't say that every day since then I've had that attitude, but, it has been a really wonderful career for me. And I do really love it. And I had an opportunity early on at Hamilton College to go from a reference librarian to director of public services. And again, I really enjoyed leadership. And what I enjoyed about it was having the opportunity to, affect change in the organization to really improve students' experience using the library. And also, the other driver for me is creating a wonderful place to work, where everyone is as excited as me to be there. So that's really what made me decide to become a college librarian, director. I really didn't have any thought in my head initially what my career plans were, other than, just figuring it out. Like, do I even like it? Can I do it? Am I good at it? That kind of thing. And then after about a year as a reference librarian, I was offered to become director of public services, kind of similar to how I got my job in the first place, where we had a search for a director of public services, and the search failed. And the director said, "Well, how about we give you a try?" And so, all right. So it worked out. My career path has a lot of luck in the trajectory, I would say. So next page, please. And what Oprah Winfrey says about luck? It's preparation and opportunity. Like, there's no such thing as luck. So we'll go with that. We'll go with that. Who doesn't like Oprah? Okay, so then just briefly, you can kind of see, it looks like a very straight path, Hamilton College, Emory University, Union College. And for those small college librarians out there, my director at Hamilton College, Ralph Stenstrom, he worked at both. He was more like a Tim, or he worked at lots of different types of libraries. He worked at small liberal arts. He worked at large research institutions. He also ran a consortial organization out in the Midwest somewhere. I forget now. It's been too long. And his advice to me was, don't stay at small liberal arts colleges your whole career. They're too small. You need to go work at a different kind of organization to understand what real problems are, problems that you can't solve. And I would say that was very good advice. Not that I feel like I can solve all my problems here at Union. I don't think I can, but I do remember my first early days at Emory University, walking around an old library that was sort of left to rot, and thinking, okay, this is what he's talking about. This is a problem that's really not solvable by any one person. You really need the college to actually solve that problem. And it took Emory, even though it's a very wealthy school, it took Emory, years, probably 10 years before it actually tackled that old library and fixed it up. So while I was at Emory, I had lots of opportunities besides my job, which was head of access services, and then went on to be the team leader for public services. Emory was going through some reorganization change. Technology was a huge disruptor of how we do things, as we all know. And I was there from 92 to 2012, and right around 96, the pressure of, what's the difference between a library and what's the difference between academic technology, and aren't they one and the same, and can't they merge, which was really in the air at Emory, and a lot of other places. Emory was one of the first places to put in a learning commons. And so there's just a lot of questions about what's the purpose of the library. And through a variety of I volunteered for a committee. They liked what I did, and then they had me do another thing, and they liked that. And then ultimately I ended up being in charge of an internal organizational development program that was very, very difficult work. But I also really liked it. because I, met my goals of, hey, I'm really helping make the library be better organization to work in and serve our students and faculty. So I almost left the field. I almost decided to do organizational development full time. And what drew me back to librarianship was my values. And I was working with a previous ACRL president, and his theme was library values as a way to ground ourselves during all this really tumultuous change, really disruptive change. Nothing. All this stuff is changing. We're having identity crisis, but our values are going to ground us. And so that really helped me realize, yes, that those values are what made me want to go to library school, and are keeping me there. And it's around, intellectual freedom and service and those kinds, learning, those kinds of things. So that was a real moment for me in the mid 90s. And then, as mentioned before, my work with Association of College and Research Libraries was fairly extensive. I was started in the college library section, and then from that was asked to run for ACRL Director at Large, which I won. I couldn't believe I won. I was just absolutely shocked that I won. That I don't think that was luck, though. I think actually I did a good job, and then same for ACRL President. And that the ACRL President's a 3-year gig, and the board member's a 4-year gig. So 7 years on the ACRL board. It was really, really good. Really good leadership experience, I would say. It's really what taught me how to be a leader, I would say, more so than any other on-the-job experience, to be perfectly honest. So if you're not actively engaged in LAMA or LIDA or PLA or whatever it is at the ALA level, I would strongly urge you to figure out a way to do that, if possible. And if not, then do it regionally. Is the next slide. You can see there all the regional activity. I was always involved regionally as well. It's just a really good way, as Tim said, to get to know people. It's a good way to network, find out what's going on in your local community, and build those muscles that you may not have an opportunity to, on the job. So I think that's all let me put my glasses on just to make sure I hit on my notes. The other thing I would say that was a trajectory is at one point, do I want to go back to small liberal arts college? Do I want to stay at a large research institution like Emory? What is it that I want to do? And that was really a tough decision. And I actually did a lot of interviewing at both large places and small places as a way to figure that out. Probably not the best way to do it, but no, the slide hasn't changed. I'm still on this. I'm back up to the college librarian piece. That I almost didn't take the dive to be a college librarian. I almost stayed in the research institutions. So now you can turn the page.
So in this one, it's a little more about kind of focusing on a couple of more of that practical management stuff, the advice that we want to kind of illustrate by using our careers as guinea pigs. And I think you talked about
Want me to go first?
The very first one.
Right.
There.
So I talked about how that was such a surprise to be nominated and then to win, and then an honor to be asked to stand for election. Just really, really great experiences. Yeah, so go ahead, right here.
And we talked a little bit about this jump for me from academic libraries to public libraries. It very much was, totally off my radar. I wasn't thinking about public libraries as a career, but I should have been, based on my experience and what I've gotten out of it. And the idea here is to, encourage people to just keep your eyes open for unexpected opportunities. This move to public libraries was completely unexpected for me, but it's been career-changing, life-changing. The next one I have is the New York Library Association. Not that specifically New York Library Association was an unexpected opportunity, but got involved in it kind of by accident. The library director at Albany Public Library was sick that day and said, "You have to go to this meeting for me." And I did. And from that moment on, I've been kind of engaged in NYLA in different activities and different levels. But what those kind of associations, whether it's ACRL or ALA or NYLA or other statewide organizations do, is it gives you opportunities to present in front of other people, to network with other people, not from just your organization or your local community. And it also gives you the opportunity, and this can be a double-edged sword, but it gives you the opportunity to develop a statewide reputation. People start knowing you as somebody who is part of making a change in this bigger community. And that kind of benefit can pay off in a lot of different ways. So look for those unexpected opportunities. And the other one, and you'll hear me say this quite a few times today, is the whole idea of taking opportunities to present publicly in a lot of different formats, like a webinar or an in-person or what have you. These are really important skills that will follow you from job to job, from different types of jobs, from even if you decide, which we're glad Frances didn't leave the profession, but even if she decided to leave the profession, those are skills you're going to take other places. And when I talk to early career librarians, one of the things I hear most often is, well, I'm really not comfortable with that public presentation idea. And, I don't want to be, the tough love guy, but you do have to get comfortable with it because it's a big part of what we do every day, communicating to small and large groups of people. So treat those unexpected opportunities for you to present publicly as opportunities to grow. And it might feel a little uncomfortable volunteering, raising your hand and saying, I'll do that. But in the end, it'll make you a better professional, guaranteed.
And then exits off the highway. For me, it was, becoming a mother, having children. I started my career in the early 80s, and I just felt like it was not a very welcoming profession. Maybe no profession was welcoming back in the 80s. I don't know. I also didn't know any women that worked that had children, so I didn't really have a role model. So it was really a mystery to me how, my mother stayed at home. She didn't work outside the home. So it was really a mystery to me how women did this. And it wasn't till I moved to Emory, into a big city like Atlanta, that I started to meet professional women who also had children, and I was able to watch and learn from them how they did it. And it was another big debate, like, how could I have both a career and be a good mother? And it just got to the point where, even though I was having all this success in my job at Emory and nationally with ACRL, I had a hole in my heart. I wasn't, as much as I loved libraries and the work I was doing, I wasn't fulfilled. So it was something that I had to figure out how to do. And it wasn't easy. And it was, I made absolutely the worst timing where here I was, when I said I would run for ACR president, I didn't have any children. And then when I was vice president, I adopted my first child. And then when I was president, I adopted my second child. And when I was past president, I adopted my third child. That was horrible. Don't ever do that. That was just horrible. So anyway, there you go. That's probably my bump in the road and my exit off the highway.
Yeah, and again, the exit off the highway, you've heard me say it already, that opportunity that presented itself to me to jump to public libraries wasn't on my radar. I wasn't expecting that exit. So you don't know who you're going to meet and where you're going to meet them. So, be ready all the time. Be on all the time. Don't say to yourself, oh, I'm going to this thing. I don't have to worry about, I don't have to be thinking about my career, my future. You should always be thinking about that.
And then bumps in the road. I think I'm the one that wrote the bad, bad in quote supervisor. Sometimes you just don't get along with your boss, and how hard that can be. And for me, I think of myself as a flexible person. I'm the middle child of 7 children. So I think I know how to get along with people pretty well. But it's really the second bullet that I realized is the problem is when there's a clash of values, that it makes it very, very difficult for me that, if I think decisions are being made by my boss or my boss's boss that are hurting the institution or hurting the students we serve, that's tough. And my best advice is you have to be ready to either go with the flow, smack that, stick that smile on your face and say, okay, or you have to be ready to leave. You have to have your resume ready, and you have to have some money in the bank account so that you're ready to find another job. Because it's, for me anyway, that was very, very difficult.
And the other piece of that is sometimes that's what you need to have, that experience that Francis is describing, where you're in an organization where the leader makes what you think is the wrong decision, for you to realize that the way to impact change, the way to affect change, is to be a leader in that organization or another organization. And as Francis said, it's about looking at opportunities. And sometimes if the values clash, that's the signal that it's time to move. I want to go back to the chat thing.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking about it now. And
which one?
It's right up on
this one.
What's your advice for? And this one's for you, I'm sure.
Oh, for getting back into the library. So the next chat, I think Carrie gave her some really good advice about networking, kind of piggybacking on what you've been saying, Tim, that's really important. And the other thing I would say is, even though you may not currently be working, keeping up with the field, doing exactly what you're doing. Here you are in a webinar. You might be holding a baby in one hand while you're doing it. I don't know. I know I've done that. So still, even though you may not physically be in a library working, you're keeping up with the field and reading and just staying current. Okay. Maybe next slide.
Let me just do one more thing on bumps in the road. That last one, and I'm referring to other opportunities that obviously weren't meant to be. We've all applied for jobs that we've all applied for jobs that we didn't get. You're not going to get every job you apply for, every job you interview for. That doesn't mean you should stop looking around. That doesn't mean you should stop trying to find that next opportunity, that next right job. I don't tell everyone to think this way, but I have a personal belief that there is some things, particularly professionally, that are just meant to be. And sometimes when you don't get the job, it's just that door closes and it does open another door, another opportunity. And I've certainly had plenty of those opportunities. You always have to learn from those experiences and say, what can I do differently? What can I do better? What should I change? Or you say, I'm not going to change anything because everything was fine, but I just have to find the right opportunity. So those absolutely are bumps in the road, and it's jarring professionally to feel like you're on a track and you apply for the job that you feel like is the next job. And whether you get close or not, and it's a little harder when you get closer and get that interview opportunity and don't get the job, that can be professionally traumatic. But you have to be able to and have a network of friends and colleagues and have a professional outlook that allows you to come out of those bumps in the road and move on to the next thing, learning from it and moving on and saying that wasn't meant to be. And that's a healthy attitude to have.
Right. And just to reply to Carrie's chat about not being able to move, I agree, Carrie. I think you're absolutely right. We can't always move. And so, the best advice my father gave me was, smile. Don't let them know how unhappy you are, because that's just horrible. And to see if you can find something that, meets your values, something that you can agree with about what's happening and feel like you are, maybe, working the reference desk, or how well you cataloged a book, and, focusing on that and trying not to focus on the things that are happening that you don't really have control over. So,
but, and if you're going to be in that organization, you don't feel like it's moving in the right direction, don't give up on being persistent about trying to affect those changes. And over time, even without being the leader, the director, you might be able to kind of move an organization in a way you think it should go. It's a lot harder from below, and it does take some persistence, and you have to do it reasonably, and you don't do it in a way that you get yourself fired, any of those things. But if you're in that kind of a position, those are you do have to kind of say, okay, this is where I am, but that doesn't mean you have to roll over on everything you don't like.
Right. So I think next slide might get to some other. So for us, we talked about, okay, how do you know where you're supposed to be? How do you know you've reached your destination? And so these were sort of the questions that are you happy? Are you actively learning? Are you making a difference? So, for us, and there may be something different for those of you out in the audience, but for Tim and I, we quickly settled on these three main buckets. Are you achieving your goals? Are you helping others? For me, it's all about work-life balance. Now that I'm a mother and I have lots of things going on, both 9 to 5 and after. For me, it's also, I mentioned earlier, empowering my staff to achieve their goals.
Yeah, and as I said, at a library system like Upper Hudson, I have 29 libraries and 29 library directors, 29 library boards that I can help be better as library directors, be better as library trustees, be better as a library serving their community. And that certainly professionally makes me very happy, because you really are making a difference on a pretty wide scale. But every little bit of success you have helping somebody be a better person, that absolutely is something that's pretty powerful and pretty fulfilling at the end of the day.
Right. And then, are you actively learning? Obviously technology is a big piece of all of our daily lives, and are we keeping up with that? And I would say now in my role, I enjoy the benefit of hiring people who are much more technologically savvy than I am, and I'm learning from them, which is really exciting, but also a challenge. And I think Tim put down the importance of interpersonal skills.
Again, I beat that drum over and over again. Everything we do in our profession, no matter what kind of library or what kind of work in the library you're working with people. And those interpersonal skills, the presentation skills, all of that is stuff you should be learning all the time, for sure.
Yeah, and I think for me, for those of you who are in academic libraries, how higher education works, so that big picture. And this might help some people who are struggling with, not really liking where the library they're working for is going, is to maybe step outside your perspective and think bigger picture. And that might help put what the director or the organization is doing in perspective. So in higher education right now, those of us who are in academic libraries, it's a very, very challenging time due to the financial situation, the high cost of college, the lack of eligible students. They're just, people stopped having babies after 2008. So there just aren't enough people to go to college in the next coming years, and people who can afford to go to college. So having that in mind, you know, like at Union, I noticed my boss was really distracted, and then it broke in the news that the college is being sued. oh, I guess you had something else on your mind than the library, you know, that there's this lawsuit out. Actually, there's 2 lawsuits that Union College is engaged in. So you know, keeping in mind that there could be other things going on that you have no idea are going on.
Yeah, and when I saw Francis put down how higher education works, I immediately went to, you know, my own kind of corollary experience is how New York State government and funding for libraries works. And I'm not going to get into any of that. I'm going to spare everybody that, but it's pretty complex. It's pretty arcane. It takes a while to understand how it all works and where the levers are, and which ones can be pushed at the right time. And this is about the politics, certainly of, you know, the Democrats and the Republicans, the executive and the Assembly and the Senate, all of that. But it's also about the advocacy piece and what works and what doesn't work. That's a learned skill, how that works. And the more of that behind the curtain stuff you know about, whether it's higher education or how your statewide funding structure works, the more effective you'll be at your job, because you're going to have a higher level of sensitivity for how these things work. You're not going to be seen as an unreasonable person just walking in, banging your fist on the table and saying, I don't understand why we can't have money. There may be a perfectly valid reason that you don't have any control over. So understanding kind of what else is going on in the world around you in your organization is a good thing to never stop learning about.
Right. And then are you making a difference? And this might get to some of the chat messages as well, where, you know, what are you doing? So maybe not focusing so much on what you can't do, but what are you able to do? And, you know, even the little things. So, you know, if I've been able to buy a database that, you know, a professor really needs first class, woohoo, you know, but I still have my terrible storage facility that I might burn down because it's in such bad shape. So I can't solve all those problems, but, you know, what can I do? And I need to, you know, make note that, you know, I have made an impact on the people I've served or the people that I've worked with. So in Sarah, small ways.
And Sarah, we're going to get back to your question because we can talk about that. Yeah. And this last column for me, are you making a difference? For me, you've heard me say that phrase a lot already. This is the key for me to defining professional success. Am I making a difference for people? For the people we serve, the community, whether in any library, you all have a service community. Are you making a difference for them? Are you making a difference in your workplace for the people you work with? And you can make a difference in a lot of different ways. Sometimes it's just by having a positive attitude. Sometimes it's just by being open to change. Sometimes it's just by having a smile on your face in the morning before your coffee. All of those things make a difference. And making a difference outside your profession, we talked a little bit about work-life balance and keeping ourselves happy. That's another piece of it, that you have to feel good about yourself. So when you come to work, you feel good about the work you do. We'll talk about that a little bit. And then, you know, in the profession, I mean, you have a responsibility as a library professional to make your profession better. And you can do that in a lot of different ways, both little and big. We've talked about a bunch of them, but those regional, statewide, national opportunities to share your good ideas with the rest of the community, try to make the community a better place. That's absolutely, for me, that's how I'm defining that happiness question that professional happiness question. So it very much is about that, getting to that destination where you look around and say, yeah, this is the right place where we're doing all these things.
So we need to go quicker because we're almost out of time.
Yep.
It's only 15 minutes left. So the next slide, I think we've touched on a lot of these things. I think the one thing that I want to, that Tim, this was one of Tim's advice, is identify realistic exemplars to model from. I just think that's absolutely wonderful. And you want to say a word or two?
Yeah, I mean, if you know you have to work on your public presentation skills, public speaking skills, we all do. If you say that to yourself, don't pick Barack Obama as your exemplar. Say, oh, I'm going to be as good as him or Michelle. Don't do that. That's probably not realistic. You want to find people that are a little bit better than you. It's like running in a race. You want to have that person who's a little bit better than you, that's always kind of going to give you a reason to push a little farther, but allow you to get there and congratulate yourself for making progress and then moving forward again. So those exemplars change from time to time. That's a really good thing to do.
Yeah, and then I think we've touched on, under opportunities, volunteering so that you can showcase your skill set, and using library organizations.
Yep.
And then I really like, Tim, that bullet, I think you added that as well, about think carefully about who you want to be associated with.
Well, and sometimes there are opportunities to volunteer for organizations because nobody else wants to be in that organization. And I'm not being flip here. I mean, but just be thoughtful about where you hang your hat. You want to be associated with organizations that are successful. You want to be associated with organizations that make a difference, that make progress. So we're stressing volunteering and getting involved, but again, you have a responsibility to yourself to look carefully at those opportunities and pick ones that you feel pretty confident that you're going to make that difference.
Right. And then under the long view, we just talked about this yesterday in one of my leader meetings, that any one of us could be replaced and the organization would still survive. So to keep that kind of, perspective that, our perspectives are important and what we want to do is important, but if the organization doesn't want it, okay, and guess what? They're going to be fine probably after, and anyone can be replaced.
Yeah, I think that's a really important.
Don't take it personally.
Yeah, for everybody to know is that nobody's irreplaceable. And it's really kind of freeing personally, professionally, when you kind of realize that no matter how important you think you are and the great work you're doing, nobody's irreplaceable. That's important.
Right. So I guess there's one more slide. And this one's really important. And I really want to highlight that this is a question everyone should ask. If you haven't already done this and you don't know, really spend some time thinking about, how do you recharge? How do you renew yourself? When my kids were little, that's all I needed, to get home and see that mom, mommy, and the big hug and the smile. I have teenagers now. They are not renewing me. They are draining me. So I need my hobbies. I need my exercise. I need my friends. So I love to garden. I love to go to see dance performances. I like to play tennis. I go to the gym as often as I can. I get together with my friends. Very, very important.
Yeah, and I have a couple of things on there. Visiting historic sites is again, that dorky librarian, dorky history geek for me. Nobody else in my family, mostly nobody else of my friends really like doing that, but I do it for myself. Sometimes you just have to do things for yourself. It's really important. It's okay to make it about you once in a while. I have sports on there mostly as I think everybody needs something that they can do or put on or watch or engage in that's a pure escape. So if you can get to a point where I mean, and I'll use sports as an example. I follow a couple of different sports teams. And during those seasons, when I put those games on for that 2 or 3 hours, I literally can pure escape from everything else. And I'm not saying you have to use sports, but you have to have something where for a couple of hours, you can get away from everything, especially when it's bad. I mean, it's still going to be there when it's over, but getting away from it gives you a little bit of a break. Sometimes it's movies for people, things like that. You know, and the service opportunities outside your profession, I think, is important to think about balancing everything else.
Yeah. The chats are wonderful. The chat, I don't know.
Very entertaining. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, and I would say to, I think it's Michelle who said she doesn't have time, or me, I can't remember. Somebody said how they don't have time to really do any of this. I would say I've been there, and see if you can step back out of your life and figure out, okay, why? What is going on? Why am I so busy I can't take time to go for a walk? There's something going on there. It might be, you know, you even need to go see, like I went to a counselor when I was at Emory through their employee assistance program. And you know, because I was getting ill from stress. So eventually your body shuts down and you have to do it anyway. So you're better off doing it before it becomes a medical issue. So I would really encourage you to you know, just like after this, if you have 15 minutes to do it, and sometimes that's all it takes is 15 minutes, you know, just little 15-minute breaks. You know, turn the lights off in your office, or go to the bathroom, or go outside for a quick 10-minute break.
Take that short walk at work, and that really can make a difference.
Yeah. Yeah, or maybe with a friend, go for a walking meeting. I used to love those. We used to go for runs and talk about work. So really do try to figure it out. It's really, really, really important.
And a couple of people in the chat have kind of commented on this, but even if you feel like you literally don't have any time, eventually that stress is going to shut you down. And then you're going to be, you know, off the field for a longer time, and you're not going to get anything done. And a lot of things will suffer. So take a little time. I mean, sometimes it's more that it feels like you don't have time to do that. Not that you don't, it's that you feel like you don't because everything's pressuring on you. And, you know, that the friends outside the profession is an important thing. Having somebody you can talk to that's kind of removed from where you are and what you're doing for work is important to have. That's a really important resource.
Yeah. So then the next slide just has our contact information, and we would love to, you know, continue the conversation with any one of you. And we've really enjoyed, you know, working together on this project.
Let's scroll up for Sarah's question, but I think we should talk about it.
Which one now
Keep
is that?
going.
Hang on. This mouse is weird. Pardon me. Okay. Yeah, I was going the wrong way.
Wow, there was a lot of chat.
Yeah. No, I think the chat's answered a lot of the questions. You don't need us.
Right.
Let's see. Well, there was a seriously struggling from Michelle. Was that the one? There was another one? No? All right, hang on.
You're going.
Did I go to? I'm going up, yeah. What one were you looking for? Do you remember?
I remember it was Sarah. Oh, right. Okay.
That change?
Yes. What if it stems from a quote unquote, this is how it's always been thought process in an organization? I think that's a not uncommon feature of organizations in our profession. And if the whole organization is like that, that's a signal for you that maybe it's time to be looking around for the next opportunity. If it's not something you can leave, you need to find some allies in an effort to kind of changed that thought process. But you better roll up your sleeves because it's going to be kind of a long, drawn-out process of kind of changing the culture of the organization. Every new person that comes in is an important potential ally. That's really important too.
I was at a meeting on Monday in Boston where a woman from Cornell did all manner of research on proving that tattle-taping your books did not prevent theft. And she had all this data, and then the Eastern Scholars Academic Trust also did a validation study that supported that tattle-taping really doesn't do much to keep the books from getting lost or stolen. And so she had all this data, and the people in her library still refused to believe her. So sometimes, you know, it doesn't matter. It's just, you know, pick your battles.
Yes, that's a feature of the profession that you just have to, or the industry that you just have to kind of work with. You probably scroll down to the bottom to see if there's anything else in there.
Let's see. And the chats, I think, were wonderful. Really great advice.
Yeah, I can't wait to go back and read them all carefully.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, Frances and Tim, I think we're basically out of time. You did a wonderful chat for us, and I want to thank you on behalf of the committee. And
you're welcome.
I think we got up to around 70 participants. I'm not positive, but we'll figure that out later. I posted a link to an evaluation in the chat for everyone so that it's easy to click on and go complete. It's very short and very helpful to us as we plan future chats. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording. And
there's a lot of really good stuff in the chats.
Yeah.
For sure.
Great. Well, thank you very much.